Alright, I have the rangefinder from this Retina IIIS here, and I'm just going to take it apart now for cleaning. And so I would normally start here by removing the arm, and I've got a tool that's made for doing pinhead screws of this nature. This one was made by Belgian Manufacturing. Belgian was the company or the person that made the tools that I use for removing the shutter assembly from Retinas quite frequently too. This was another one of the tools they made. And I find it quite useful. So there's lots of different ways you can loosen a pinhead screw like that. Now that I've broken that loose, I can use tweezers. I've got the screw, a wavy washer, and I'll lift that arm off. Pop that to one side for the moment. And the arm here, you can see the arm has a bronze bush or brass bush in the centre. This camera's not exactly quick at focusing, I notice. Normally I mark this. The brass bush is probably circular, but it may not be entirely circular. I usually put a mark there by the gap where it's slotted and put a scratch on the top surface of the bush so that I can see it goes back in exactly the same place, and hopefully that means that I'll have fewer adjustments I'll need to make when I put it all back together. Pop that to one side. Here I've got the body of the rangefinder. We have a mechanism on the rangefinder here that shifts the frames in the finder for the various lenses. I'm undoing the screw, the pivot screw for that coupling arm. I'll lift off that coupling arm. There are two screws down here that hold this arm to the body. Those screws are pretty much identical with the one we've just lifted off. That arm should lift off now. This whole frame assembly here is held in with there's a clamp, two screws that clamp that up, and I'll see if I can loosen those screws. I'm going to lift that out completely. You don't need to remove the screws, just loosen them. I should be able to lift that frame section right out now. Here it goes. Checking that that moves smoothly. It looks all right. Here we have a single screw that holds this retainer for the rear lens, the eyepiece. So I'll remove that screw. And pop the retainer and the eyepiece to one side. That's as far as it needs to be stripped down for cleaning. I clean this from here in the ultrasonic cleaner. I don't clean it for very long. I'm just going to put a bit of naphtha on a cotton bud and clean this surface here. That's where the arm contacts the body, and I'm just removing any grease from there. This piece here, I'll do the same. That's where that arm to adjust, select the frames runs, and again I'm just cleaning any old grease off there. They're the only surfaces that should have any grease on them. That's all I need to do. That piece can go away to the ultrasonic cleaner. The arm just needs to be wiped with naphtha on that top surface where it contacts the body of the rangefinder. I'm wiping around the hole in the centre where the bush runs. That should do it. So we've got rid of any oil or grease from this. I've got to clean the glass here inside and out. That'll be done with just a cotton bud, a Q-tip with domestic glass cleaner. The rear eyepiece glass, that'll be treated the same. Now the glass is effectively flat on one side and convex on the other. The flat side goes to the outside, the convex side goes inwards into the finder. I'm looking at the state of the glass here. There's only one surface that I would touch with a cotton bud if I decided it was needed, and it would be this outer surface here, the surface facing to the front on the semi-silvered mirror. And I will clean that just to remove any obvious marks so that it's easier to judge when the inner surface has been cleaned in the ultrasonic cleaner. Otherwise that's all I need to do. This semi-silvered mirror, to me, it's got a hazy look to it. That haze appears to be mostly on the inner surface, the semi-silvered surface inside, and I certainly won't be poking at that with a cotton bud. So I shall clean this finder assembly in the ultrasonic cleaner, and how I go about doing that is I put it in a glass, a small glass, a couple of drops of dishwashing detergent in the glass, fill the glass up with warm water, drop the rangefinder into that glass, suspend that glass in the ultrasonic cleaner surrounded by warm water, and normally I just blast it away for 3 minutes. Once it's done, I pull it out, I rinse it under the hot tap, not boiling hot, dishwashing hot, rinse it well to get rid of any leftovers, blow it out with the puffer, one of those rocket blowers, and then dry it with a hairdryer. Now while you're drying it, you also want to have that puffer, that rocket blower handy, because it's important to blow off any droplets that you might notice on the glass before they dry. Once they dry, they'll leave like a coffee ring on there. You know what they look like. If you blow away all the droplets as you go, you'll find that you end up with glass that's nice and clean. So that's the next task for me. I won't bother showing you that. I think I've explained it in detail. And once it's all clean, I'll come back and reassemble everything. Well, I've had this through the ultrasonic cleaner, and I'm very happy with the state of the semi-silvered mirror. That appears to be good. That's nice and clean. But the surface silvered mirror over here has got quite a marked hazy look to the surface of it. And so it doesn't look like fingerprints, but there's certainly something going on there. That's a bit hazy. You can even pick that up in the camera there, I think. That you will see at this edge that there's quite pronounced haziness across that surface. So I'm going to clean this again. This time I'll suspend the semi-silvered mirror out of the solution so that it's not being cleaned again. I do not want to over clean the silvering in here, otherwise it will go away. I'll end up with a clean piece of glass you can see straight through. But I do want to do this part again. It just doesn't look good to me, and I suspect that I can improve that. I might even remove it entirely from the frame. And just clean that semi-silvered mirror. I'm holding it up to the light to see whether the silvering has been removed and whether the dull spots are actually me seeing the glass. But that doesn't appear to be the case. It appears to be the silver that's the problem. So I'm going to go away and clean that, and I'll report back. Alright, well, I've cleaned that surface silvered mirror again. It's improved, but not an awful lot. I'm going to assemble the finder and see how it behaves. Okay, it's difficult to get this backing in place. It's springy and it doesn't want to drop into place. That's better. In this particular case, the casting here is a bit low at that point, and so I wasn't able to push that edge in properly. It's in place. That's good. So what I'll do is I will assemble the finder. If I'm happy that my secondary image is bright and contrasty, nice and clear, then I'll leave that mirror alone. If I decide that the image quality there is too poor, I'll replace that mirror with another one. As these things go, there are no new replacement parts, so I'll be hunting through my box of spares to find one that the appearance of pleases me more than this one. Anyway, to advance with the assembly of this componentry, first I'll put the eyepiece glass back in. I've got its frame there and its screw. So I'll need to clean that glass. So I'm cleaning the outer surface first, the flat surface. I'll clean the inner surface, the convex surface, and I can see that it has a bit of an oily haze to it. It certainly had a dirty look. Just drop that into place, and now I'm looking through it and at the reflections of the surface on the glass to see if there are any marks or dust on there that need to be removed, but it looks good. I need to replace the screw that holds the retainer in place. Of course, the retainer's trying to get away while I'm doing this. That's it. That's going nowhere now. I'll just hold my hand in front of the mirror. The semi-silvered mirror at the front here looks through from the back. I should be able to see a clear view through the surface silvered mirror. So I'm seeing the image from the eyepiece through the semi-silvered mirror, down through the system here, and then through the front surface mirror here. And I've looked at the quality of that image. It was nice and bright, nice and clear. So I have no worries about the state of this front surface mirror here. That's going to be adequate for my purposes. That's good. So, let's reassemble some more of this rangefinder assembly. Next I need to look at the frames. This mechanism adjusts as the arm pulls across here. It swings that mask up and down, exposing or covering bright lines which are then projected into the finder. And what I'm checking here is that the action is smooth, that there's no undue drag. That appears good. The component here is actually riveted on. It can't be disassembled. So there's no point me taking that any further apart. I'm just checking that the actions are smooth. If they were not smooth, if I decided that they were unduly stiff because of dried grease, I would have to put a tiny drop of solvent. I would have to hold this up with the frame upwards so as not to damage the film, because there's like a film in there with those lines on them. I'd have to hold that up so that wasn't damaged. Apply a tiny drop of solvent in both of those slots and work the arm to clear any contaminants like dried grease, and then touch it lightly with a cotton bud to remove everything, and then check it again once it's dried. You wouldn't want to get solvent onto the film behind here. You'll bugger it up. That'll be the end of it. There's also a plastic diffuser on the front there. Likewise, you wouldn't want to get any solvent on that because it will damage it. In this case, that component looks fine, which is just as well. And that can go back into the rangefinder body. That goes in from the front. I lower that into the slot. That's good. Now there were two screws here and here which clamp that piece into place. So I'll lightly tighten those up, very lightly, because the arm will distort if you tighten it up too much anyway. And what I need to achieve here is make sure that that frame is flush with the casting, top and bottom. Otherwise the frame lines won't sit parallel with the edges of the viewfinder frame. So I'll tighten those two screws up. And I'll look through the finder from the back, and if I can see some frame lines, I'll just move that. I just want to make sure those frame lines are parallel. I'll just expose some. That should do. I'm just looking to see if those frame lines appear parallel with the viewfinder frame. They're pretty good, they're not quite right. Let's just give that a nudge. See if that moved in the right direction. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, I'm happy with that. I want to lock that in place now, and that's done by putting a tiny drop of lacquer, top and bottom, between the frame line frame and the chassis here of the rangefinder, making sure that that lacquer does not get through to the moving component. We don't want that. So the other component here is the spring. There's a little return spring here which needs to hook into place on top of that frame, and that serves to push the frame component downwards, and I'm checking that that's smooth in action, nice and snappy, and it is. So I need to take some clear nail varnish and put a tiny drop top and bottom here to make sure that this component doesn't shift. Here I've got some clear nail varnish. Doesn't need to be expensive. You can steal your wife's nail varnish at your depending on how dangerous you like to live. So what I do is I fetch some nail varnish, get a little drop on the end of a toothpick, and just dab it in place where I want it to be, and it just needs a tiny drop, almost nothing. And that's just to stop that frame assembly being able to shift in the rangefinder body. Now I've got to clean up these components and put them back in place. These are the levers that swing the frames into position. So what I'm doing here is cleaning them with a bit of naphtha to remove any old grease which may have dried out and gone sticky. The appropriate frame lines visible in the finder are selected by the lens that you install on the front of the camera. The rangefinder coupling pin has a collar surrounding it, and the pin does the rangefinder and the collar does the selecting of the frames. That's good. So I will get some molybdenum paste and give that a very light touch. So what I'm interested in is the insides of those slots where it runs around the screw. And a very, very thin wipe on that surface where it contacts the body of the rangefinder. On this component, I'll wipe it through the screw hole in the centre, the pivot, and in the fork at either end. This component drops into place. Now it has a little pin on it, and that pin must couple with the slot in the selector here, so I'm just making sure that that's in fact happening. That appears to be so. And I can fit two screws in there to hold it. Now my screwdriver's gone magnetic. I'll have to deal with that. I've just put one of the screws in, made sure it's home, checking to make sure that the arm is correctly coupled, and it does shift the frames correctly. I'll put the other screw in. Nip those two screws up. That action's a bit stiffer than I would expect it to be. And things are not returning under their own steam, so I'll just remove that. It needs to be very free in action so that the frames drop back down to their rest position, if you like. I'll just check the action of this again. And it's probably a bit stiffer than I would like. So a little bit of investigation with a drop of solvent will be in order.